Nosy Joe's Motovlog. We're here at the 4th round of Mid-South cross-country racing down here in Crawford, Tennessee at the Cub Mountain ATV Park. I'm showing you my second lap because I forgot to turn on my camera until about 30 seconds into the first lap, so this isn't my best lap, but it's the next best lap, I think, and the cleanest one before my camera got dirty. So I'm starting out here in row 15, and I think I had just come through timing in 7th place, I want to say. This place has a lot of variety. You can see some single track into some little sand dunes over there that we did, and then kind of this flat course. Then we're going to get into a lot of logging roads, I guess you would call them, fire roads, and then there's some pretty good technical stuff you'll see as well. We raced here last year, and in general I would say this is last year's course backwards with a couple variations on it. And I was real happy with it. I thought it was a fun course. It was a high of 60 degrees at 2 o'clock. Our race started at 1, so it was really good weather. The sun started to blind you towards the end of the race, and as you can see, the shadows from the trees played a factor as well, especially when you got dirty goggles, and you're going to see why one might have dirty goggles here in a bit. Looks like I need to wipe my camera lens already, but I think I'd do it later. For those that haven't watched my videos before, I'm on a 2003 Suzuki DRZ 400E. So like the last couple races, we did have a lot of open, flowy areas like this. We could have some good speed. And this being my second lap, I've got a little more confidence of where the curves and the mud puddles are going to be. So yeah, just double checking my lap time report here. I was in 7th at lap 1, which means Jason on his YZ250 is ahead of me in 6th. Not that Yamaha. There's some pretty good hill climbs in this course. Cash had warned us before the race that the worst ones don't have a bypass, so you're just going to have to figure it out. There was a couple instances where I had to kind of wait on people to clear, just like a couple riders, but no big bottlenecks. There were lots of just rocks here and there you had to keep an eye out for. Some peeking out under the ground, and some, just loose that you'd have to watch out for. There's definitely a rocky area and kind of a sandy area. So just kind of strange terrain for what I think of a Tennessee. Starting to see a little bit of mud here. It rained pretty good in Kentucky and Tennessee on Thursday. Friday it had a chance to dry out some, but the sun never really broke until Saturday, so it was still drying out as the race went on. There was a couple, maybe just one kind of mud bog that if you didn't get up on the high side of it, slowed you down, but for the most part the mud wasn't a factor, and I was happy with the dirt conditions. Again, for those of you that don't watch my videos, I always kind of mention my tires. I'm an IRC fan ever since I raced at TKO a couple years ago, and Rich Larson, the tire guy, came and talked to me and wished me well, so I've been dedicated. There's Jason in front of me. He's the 6th place guy I got to get ahead of. Anyway, I've kind of been dedicated to IRC, which really is not a problem. Got around him there. I'm not really leaving anything on the table by doing that, especially on the rear. M5B, I'm running a 130 in the back of the DRZ. I mentioned before that maybe a 120 would turn a little bit better. But the 130 and the big old knobs on it are great for these types of conditions you see here. The front is where I've struggled a little bit. I really like the VX40. That's what I ran last year on the XR600, but I didn't like it during the mudders. And it's really an intermediate hard tire. But honestly, even during this race, I really wish I would have that VX40. It's just a softer compound, and it bites the slick rock better. And there's lots of rock garden during this course. The VX30 that I'm running is not bad. It's just a little bit more spacing, which is why it's a soft terrain tire, but the compound is a little harder, which I don't like as much. I wish basically I had VX30 spacing and VX40 compound. I was hoping the 30 was just that, but it is just not broken in. It is a much tougher carcass tire. So here's one of the hills that people were struggling with. You see guys coming down. I decided to take a chance and see if I can snake in between them, and I do. It wasn't the steepest hill, it's just there was just a lot of things that knock you around on the way up. It was hard to keep a steady climb on it. To me, though, it was not the most difficult area. We'll get to that later. I was always pretty confident because you had a good run up that I was going to make that hill. It was some smaller, more technical areas that I came to worry about more as the race progressed. And it was one of those things that I was pretty sure I could make it, but I wasn't going to be able to make it if there was anybody in my line having trouble. Yeah, you can just see the shadow of the trees combined with the sun glare. Visibility was somewhat of an issue. I guess if you had tear-offs and things like that, then maybe that would help. But I was talking to a guy after the race who did tear-offs, and he said, the sun was just blinding though, so it was a difficult decision as far as what eyewear to use. So yeah, I passed Jason back there a couple minutes ago, so that's got me in 6th place, which I do hold for a while, I think a couple laps, but then he ends up getting around me at some point, and I didn't really notice when, but I did have a couple tip overs later in the race. And then in the 5th lap, we both did 5. I caught up with him, but then I tipped over again, and so he ended up beating me by about 30 seconds, so I ended up in 7th place. So while I'm talking about placing, a kind of interesting story here, there are 13 guys in the class, and the guys who finished in the top 4 were guys who hadn't raced this class all season, so they did very well, but they weren't guys that in terms of the series and season points really matter that much. The first place guy got 6 laps, so he really outdid all of us regulars. So in terms of regulars, the first time you see them in the placings, there's a mud bog right there that gets rough later on. The first time you see any of the regulars is in 5th place, so even though I got 7th, you know, in terms of like points that matter, I kind of got 3rd for the guys that regularly show up at the races. So I was happy when I finally saw the result, because I felt like I was riding well and riding with the guys that I normally keep pace with, but my placement of 6th and 7th was below average, because I've been getting 3rd, 4th pretty regularly. So that makes sense of that. If those first 4 guys weren't here, and they probably aren't going to be regularly, because they've already missed 3 races, you know, I basically would have pulled a 3rd place, so, and been in the fight for 2nd with Jason. So all that said, you know, pretty good. Now this was kind of rough here, this downhill, and I'm in the right lane, and I figured out later I needed to be in the left lane on that steeper part. It was a little slimy. So now we're kind of on our way descending into the real technical area. We're not there yet, but we're headed there. And I thought this was really fun area. There was a while in my racing that I liked to dabble in the hard enduro stuff. I wasn't any good at it, but I just enjoyed the challenge of it. The DRZ is not the right bike for it, but it's fun. So this was a little tough spot right here to get up. It doesn't look like it maybe much on the GoPro, but made it look pretty easy, but that was kind of tough. And then there's another place here. It'll be tough too. Oh, and see, if I make it around that guy, I gotta kind of hope this guy's gonna keep his momentum. He does. So yeah, this was tough. And there were guys that kind of struggled right through here throughout the whole race, but got through it all right. Nobody got in front of me. Then this is what I believe they were calling the rock garden. This was just kind of a more or less straight path, but just knocked around a lot by the rocks. I kept it in 2nd gear, and that soft DRZ suspension pretty much just ate it up. It was good. This is when you are glad you aren't on a motocross bike. This little downhill here kind of screwed me up some. I think this is where I messed up in the 5th lap, trying to catch up with Jason. It was coming right down there. But here on lap 2 I was doing fine. So yeah, that section right there to me was the most questionable area of the course as far as where you're going to make it clean. Mostly just because of the traffic. You never knew what lane you were going to have to get in. But yeah, that made it fun. Just a lot of variety, you know. A lot of flow, but then some more technical than normal. Definitely had a couple creek crossings, but they weren't really anything difficult. little climb here was a little bit technical. And there was some track helpers kind of camped out along here later in the race. Like, apparently guys had trouble right through here. You end up kind of deeply off camber. Drop back down and off camber again. Yeah, there's Cash. And then you pop up out of here, hang a left, and it opens back up. I want to give a shout out to my friend Rob Feaster. If you look him up on YouTube, I think his video channel is called something like Rob Feaster's 100-pound weight loss journey. Something to that effect. You might not realize it's dirt bike related, but I mean, he has lost a lot of weight, but he's been riding saddleback a couple times a week for the last several months. He's dropped, I don't know, probably 80 pounds of that, 100 pounds. And he placed, I think he said 8th out of 15 in Masters C, and did 4 laps. And so that's a very respectable finish. When he was first started racing again a few years ago, he was like a 2 laps and quit, 3 laps and quit, because he was just didn't have the stamina. And he did 2 hours and 8 minutes, 4 laps, and stuck it out on a very, not an easy course. So shout out to Rob there. Check out his channel. The other cool thing about Rob's channel is he gives me a shout out whenever I lap it. So you can watch for that. One thing I felt good about this season is these faster guys, even when they pass me on the open areas, they don't just leave me in the dust. I can keep the DRZ apparently at a good enough pace that in the open areas at least, I'm not just being left behind, keeping guys in my sights. As far as bike setup, I've been not changing anything from race to race because I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. I haven't even changed my tire pressure. I just let colder temperatures let it be a little bit lower, and that's just kind of worked out because it's been a little bit softer and muddier as the temperatures have dropped. Having said that, I'm thinking about tightening up the rebound on the forks so they're just a little bouncy. And I had just opened them up a click before round 2. And I think I might close them back that one click. It's good, it's predictable, it's just the rebound on the forks is so fast right now that when I get it really deep into the stroke, it almost pulls a wheelie coming out of it, like it kicks the front end up hard. I'm trying to think of what that means in terms of tire traction, though. I mean, that might mean I'm keeping good pressure on the tire. I'm not sure. I mean, of course I'm not when I go into a wheelie, but like if I slow that down, I'm thinking if I slow that down, that's the right move to go. So, and I've ridden the bike a lot at that setting. It's just that I tried to soften up the bike a little bit for the rougher stuff, but you do that and then you get into the wide open things, and I'm very bouncy. So I'm starting to second guess that. I need to look at what our next race location is and decide if that's the direction I want to go. But these faster pace races we've had recently, I've been wondering if going softer was the right thing. Now it worked out great, like in that rock garden and everything, so I guess that's the balance you gotta find. Looks slick there, but really no problems on those creek crossings. Some of this is like 4th and 5th gear stuff on the DRZ, which only is a 5-speed. That's alright. I'm really happy with that DRZ's engine. At first I wasn't sure, because it's a downgrade in torque coming off that XR600, but it's a lot more happy to rev. And I found myself actually playing with valve adjustment more on the, I mean, I haven't done anything on the DRZ, but the XR, I had to keep playing with the exhaust valves, which were easy to adjust on those, but yeah, the engine is just very good. It's if there was some, and in terms of linear, it's got to be like a straight line. It's like the easiest thing to control, but it does have a, I can tell based on the other riders that, you know, especially like in a hill climb situation, it's got more torque, you know, than these 250 race bikes have, and so that's an advantage. Not like the 600, but like, you know, I would have trouble going to a 250. The problem is going to a 450 is not, I don't think, a wise decision. So here I am. You know, like a lot of guys ask me about it, but I mean, I really feel like for these races that are just a mixture of, you know, tight, and oftentimes the tight has a more of an impact in your finish, how well you can do in the tight stuff than the open stuff. There's really no disadvantage of riding a glorified trail bike like this, or a dual sport. I don't really know how to classify DRZ. It's like a water-cooled trail bike, I guess. Alright, we're down here to the last 30 seconds in the campground area. And I should be in 6th place coming through scoring. So thank everybody for watching, and I'll see you at round 5. Later.